Dr. Cuffari, have you heard about the DHS policy of collecting the DNA of children and storing it into the FBI criminal database, yes or no?
I believe there is not a policy to do children.
There absolutely is. Mr. Chair, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record this report from July 2025 titled Raiding the Genome, how the United States government is abusing its immigration powers to amass DNA for future policing.
Without objection.
This policy began under Donald Trump. In his first term, he authorized DHS to begin mass DNA data collection from immigrants, including children, and hand that data over to an FBI database designed to track violent offenders. Now that he's back, Trump is taking this policy to new extremes, adding more than 250,000 people to the database in just 4 months. I'm right here. 250,000 people, okay, in 4 months. This committee recently held a hearing on genetic data, and there was bipartisan agreement that DNA is highly sensitive and its misuse is a violation of people's rights because children as young as 4 years old could not possibly consent to DNA collection.
What's up, everybody? Major Retired Richard Ojeda here, and we've all heard about the so-called conspiracies, Area 51, Bohemian Grove, alien armadas, Flat Earth, and QAnon, the kind of conspiracies that never rest. But you want to hear something that's not a conspiracy that just sounds as shocking as can be? They're harvesting DNA from 4-year-olds. And that's not a theory, it's really happening. Clay Higgins and the Republicans are pushing a bill to redefine what an alien is so they can justify building a lifetime criminal database on migrant kids who can't even give consent. Let's make no mistake about it. This is not about protecting children. It's about power, it's about surveillance, and it's about control.
This administration is turning childhood trauma into a permanent record. Republicans on this committee, you claim to be focused on protecting children, yet you're ignoring actual threats to their safety. You traumatize children with the threat of disappearing their parents. You traumatize children by disappearing their parents. You traumatize children by collecting their DNA without their consent and criminalizing them. You traumatize children by denying them food when they're hungry. You traumatize children by denying them essential health care, which is their human right. You traumatize them so much that they're afraid to show up to school, afraid to show up to church, afraid to go to doctor's appointments. Mr. Chair, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record this July 2025 article from the Boston Globe titled, I Want Daddy, as ICE detains parents and children.
Without objection, the gentlelady's time has expired. Ms. Mason
Stop
is
using children as
recognized
pawns. This is the
for
real
5
child
minutes
abuse.
for questions.
Thank
Thank you,
I
Mr.
yield.
Chairman. I appreciate the passion this afternoon.
And when Ayanna Pressley called it out, Clay Higgins couldn't take it. Clay Higgins can dish it out, but he sure as hell can't take it. He slammed the gavel, shut the meeting down, and ran into recess without even voting on his own bill.
Pursuant to the previous order, the subcommittee stands in recess, subject to the call of the chair.
Point of order. Are we
we're
not
in
going to take the
recess.
vote?
We're in recess. That was a previous order.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, we need to take the vote from the motion.
We're in recess pursuant to the previous order, which passed without objection. So we're in recess, and we will move to those votes. But, sorry, this is out of order conversation. I'm just being polite. We had the previous order that we moved without objection. Votes would be moved until after deliberation. Well, subject to call of the chair. Our hope is today we have plans. We have plans.
Forever recess. Children will not.
Sir, when is the actual, when are we back in session for this subcommittee? After votes?
That is subject to the call of the chair, as I stated. So,
We're going to do a permanent
reflective of
recess.
the previous order. So, stand by.
Meanwhile, while they're distracting you with fear-mongering, Summerlee dropped the hammer, passing a motion to subpoena the full, unredacted Epstein files, and it passed 8-2. Now the real predators might finally be exposed, and all those so-called conspiracies, anti-vax, anti-fluoride, all of it will be shown for what they are, propaganda and distractions, aligned with Nikita Khrushchev's vision of destroying America from within.
I expect my Republican colleagues to care about this because their constituents certainly care about child sex trafficking, whether it's through the immigration system, like this hearing alleges, or by a U.S. citizen facilitating other powerful U.S. citizens. It's time for them to prove it. Right now, Speaker Johnson is helping Donald Trump block the release of all the files relating to child sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. If you want to take a stand against child trafficking, let's do it together. When powerful people exploit children, they must be held accountable for their actions. And if they try to mislead the public and hide evidence, we can't let them get away with it. So we can't allow individuals, especially those at the highest level of our government, to protect child sex traffickers. So today, that's why I will be offering a motion to subpoena the Department of Justice to release the Epstein files. Numerous members of this committee and this subcommittee have called for answers and transparency. So let's do something about it. Rep. Biggs has said, we want to get to the bottom of it. Rep. Mesa stated, I believe we need answers on Epstein. If 1,000 kids were trafficked, how is there only one accomplice? Rep. Perry has written to Pam Bondi on Epstein saying the American people deserve answers and justice, particularly in matters involving grave allegations of criminality and misconduct by influential figures. Rep. Boebert said, we deserve the truth about the Epstein files. Yesterday, our Government Operations Subcommittee approved a motion directing Chairman Comer to subpoena Ghislaine Maxwell to appear for a deposition before this committee. But Ms. Maxwell is currently serving a 20-year federal prison sentence for her role in sex trafficking children with Jeffrey Epstein. She could have a motivation to protect powerful people to get a lighter sentence. We need the actual Epstein files to get the full truth. So I hope my Republican colleagues will join me in supporting a motion to subpoena the Department of Justice to release the Epstein files. With that, pursuant to Clause 2K6 of House Rule 11, I move that the subcommittee issue a subpoena to the Department of Justice for the full, complete, unredacted Epstein files to be delivered concurrently to the majority and minority of the Subcommittee on Federal Law Enforcement of the Committee of the Oversight and Government Reform.
But before we go any further, let's call this what it really is. The Republican Party wants to legalize kidnapping. And worse, they're laying the groundwork for ethnic cleansing. They want the power to take kids off the streets, disappear families out of their homes, and funnel them into a system where their DNA is collected and stored in a national database to track them for life. Trump swore he was going after criminals, rapists, and the worst of the worst. But what's happening here? They're not targeting traffickers. They're targeting children. And while they're doing it, they have the audacity to stand there, like Clay Higgins did, and call these God's children. If they truly believed these were God's children, they wouldn't be tagging them like cattle and branding them as future criminals. They wouldn't be building a surveillance state that follows a child from the cradle to adulthood under the guise of protection. This isn't law and order. This isn't mercy. It's cruelty by design. And they're doing it while hiding behind faith. You think this is all about protecting kids? Nope. What's really going on here is far darker. Peel back the curtain, and here's what you'll find. Trump and the Republicans aren't saving children. They're enabling the traffickers. They're setting up a system that brands these kids, tracks them like criminals from the age of 4, and follows them into adulthood. It's a life sentence for being born on the wrong place. And don't let them fool you. They're not fighting trafficking. They're protecting the real traffickers, the Epsteins and the Maxwells of the world, by burying their files, giving them immunity, and making sure the truth never sees the light of day. This is Trump's legacy. He promised law and order, but what did we get? Chaos, surveillance, camps that look like Alligator Alcatraz. He promised safety, but he's out here tearing kids out of cancer treatment and deporting them to die. He promised peace, but he gave us fear and cruelty by design. They promised to protect children from predators, but they gave limited immunity to Ghislaine Maxwell, buried the Epstein files, and shielded the very monsters who abused kids. They promised law and order, but they're literally snatching kids as young as 4, swabbing their DNA without consent, and branding them like criminals for life. They promise safety and security for American families, but they're tearing children out of life-saving cancer treatment, deporting them to countries where they'll die, and building internment camps like Alligator Alcatraz with secret airports to quietly disappear families. They're not saving God's children, they're sacrificing them on the altar of their own power. And let's talk about where this road leads. Fort Bliss. On paper, it's just a military base in Texas, but under Trump's blueprint, it's being converted into the largest immigrant detention center in U.S. history. They're calling it temporary housing, but don't be fooled. It's a sprawling internment complex built to cage 5,000 human beings at a time. They're throwing families and children into tents with no floors, no insulation, and no cooling in 110-degree heat in Texas. You want to know what the most chilling part? Fort Bliss is getting its own private deportation airport, so they can quietly disappear people in the dead of night, with no oversight, no accountability, and no media cameras rolling. This isn't about safety. It's about normalizing cruelty. It's about showing their base that they have the power to cage and discard brown bodies like they're disposable. And if you think it stops there, ask yourself how many times in history ethnic cleansing started with camps for others and ended with camps for everyone. And for all the Bible verses they love to throw around, here's the truth. Your faith isn't measured by how you treat the powerful. It's measured by how you treat the least among us. And by that measure, they have failed, morally, spiritually, completely. They're building a future on cruelty, on the lie that branding a 4-year-old like a criminal is somehow protection, on the hypocrisy of preaching Christianity while ignoring its core command to care for the hungry, the sick, and the stranger. So don't tell me they're protecting kids. Don't tell me they're doing this in the name of God. This isn't faith, it's fear, it's power, and it is absolute control. Ayanna Pressley exposed them. She tore apart their fake child protection narrative right in front of their cameras. Summerlee hit them with the hammer, forcing a vote to subpoena the full, unredacted Epstein files, and it passed 8-2. Only Clay Higgins and Nancy Mace voted no. And what did Higgins do when the truth cornered him? He folded. He slammed the gavel and ran into recess. That's what cowards do when they get caught. Because here's the bigger picture, and this is what you better pay attention to. If they can tag and track migrant kids today, what's stopping them from doing it to yours tomorrow? If they can normalize snatching a 4-year-old out of school, out of chemo, out of their parents' arms, then nobody's safe. Once you hand the state that kind of power, it never stops with the most vulnerable. It spreads, it grows, it consumes. And don't think for a second that they won't. They call it law and order. They'll wrap it in a flag. They'll even hide behind a Bible verse and tell you it's about protecting God's children. But it's not. It's about building a surveillance state while they shield the real predators hiding in plain sight. So don't let them lie to you about who they are. Don't let them distract you with conspiracies while they're doing something even darker right out in the open. Because at the end of the day, if you think you're better than someone else because of where you were born or the color of your skin, it's you who is beneath us all. History won't forget who built the camps. History will not forget who tagged the kids. And history sure as hell won't forget who stood by it and let it happen. And that is an absolute fact. Sappers clear the way, airborne all the way.